It's live. You gotta go.
Let's go. Let's go live.
It's already live.
Right. All right. Let's celebrate it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan Torah. Amen. All right. Okay, guys. Just before we get started, most of you guys are staying. Right, let me mention it now, for those of you who aren't. We're going to be discussing over the next couple of weeks as we prepare for Pesach. Who's going to host the Seder's? There's going to be teachings. We're probably going to do the first and the second session. On the day that we do that, I'll give you guys a heads up. Please just prepare for it. I'd like you guys to be here for both if you can. For those of you who have kids, maybe start preparing them as you go through Pesach and everything. There's a lot of information, so we found that rather process it slowly, all right? Because as you'll see, Passover is just not dealing with Exodus 12. We start from the plagues and we build up from there so that they understand what the point is, okay? So for your reading as well, you guys obviously know we try and cover as much as we possibly can, but it's a big topic. There's lots of links. There's lots of different things that overlap from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and I don't want us to get lost in all of that and we miss the heart of the foundation of it, okay? Start thinking about, I warned you guys a while ago regarding any comments in your homes, yeast products. You guys should already be checking. So your sauces, your spices, and all those things, start pulling out anything with a vinegar in it. If it's not specific, it might be malt vinegar. We have to get rid of that stuff. So if you don't know, we're going to send out a bit of a list. But it's not exorbitant, right? There's not everything. So if you're not sure about something, go to check. Yeah.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Dog food, cat food, canary food, does that have to fall under this?
Look, I don't think so, because ultimately the prohibition says you will not eat, but there's also the thing that says we will not be found in your home. So what we normally do, okay, and this is just us, I haven't felt convicted in any way to get rid of it completely or go like kosher dog food, we stick it outside in the shed. Right, so in our homes and we're a place where we eat and those things are completely done, but my dog's not keeping Passover, I am. So I do that, but that again, that's where I am at this point. Okay.
I find that kids who come to school sometimes don't understand and they put sort of the stuff on their lunch. Is it okay if I just keep their lunch outside, not the classroom and not inside?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But yeah, like we all learned when you started to do this. I mean, I remember my first Passover thinking I'm doing everything 100%. I went out to eat at a restaurant, at a steak. Had a lovely basting on that steak, and I only realized halfway through my steak that I didn't know what was on the sauce. Okay, so this is a learning process. The problem is most sauces, I'm talking about 99% of them, and 99% of your spices have some sort of yeast extract or yeast in it already. Alright? So if you just simply want to break it down, stay away from anything processed, eat fresh fruit, fresh veg, frozen veg is also fine, and meat, and then you just use salt, pepper, and normal herbs, not your mixed spices, and you just eat like that. It is not that complicated. We make it complicated, and we focus on the stuff that we have to get rid of. Now I can't have cornflakes in my life, or whatever, and we can't have toast in the morning, so therefore this is really difficult, but really it's not. Okay, we just need to focus on what I was telling us to do, and hopefully I'll clarify that for you today.
Can I resend to you what I sent out last year about what you can actually do with unleavened bread?
Please do. Send it to me and then I'll put it on there. Okay. So depending on when the moon is sighted, we're expecting it possibly to be either on the 19th, the 20th, or the 21st. I'm broad stroking this. Okay. If it appears that the 14th or the 14th day, we're going to the 15th day, the first Shabbat will be on Shabbat. If not, it'll be on a Sunday, but there is a chance that it's going to start on Sunday night, and then go on to Monday morning. For those of you who have not yet put in leave, Okay, I know some of your bosses and things like that, you've explained, you've got to wait for the new moon to come and then we can count, so you still give them 14 days notice on when you can and what you can and can't do on that day. Alright, so there's a small chance that might go into the month. So rather prepare them for that, but...
Sorry, are you taking into account for, like, kind of working over 5th, 6th and 7th of April as you cited?
Yeah, well, we just have to see when the last starting is.
I've looked at the calendar, it's pretty much squares on the Easter weekend itself, so the least you might be only looking at one day on
Yeah.
either side.
Yeah, well, it just depends. But for those of you who haven't prepared that far yet, we'll send out, once everything is cited, we do our count, and then we'll just send it out, and then you guys can connect whoever you need to know what's going on. Okay? Happy days. All right. So, you can guess what I'm going to be discussing today. Yeah. We're going to be discussing new moon / chicken wings. I've never seen a buffalo. All right, guys. Okay, so I want to just slowly start bringing in Passover to you. Okay, but with every story there is a backdrop. And you have to understand your backdrop before you understand the context of why Passover was so important, that it is a perpetual ordination. It is something that you need to do forever. Okay? It's one of those feasts, and let's not take my word for it. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Go to Leviticus 23. Okay, and someone give me... Okay. So what we're going to have is we actually have 7 feasts of God. Okay? These are the major feasts. And Yom Kippur is going to be a feast, but right now we're fast. But these are the major times of God. These are what they call the Moedim. Okay? And that you will find in Genesis, where it talks about the sun, the moon, and the stars to give you the times. Okay? The times and the seasons. Now these times is what he gives us here. And we count as new moons, as we go, as we've learned. And these are his special days. Okay? This is about God. This is about him bringing a nation unto himself and saying, guys, this is what I want you to celebrate. Okay? We all have special days in our calendar. We have our birthdays maybe, we have our spouse's birthdays, we have our anniversary dates, we have special times that we celebrate. And once you start to break these things up, you will start to see there are things that are, these are all laying a foundation for things that Yeshua came to do and things that are going to happen later. Okay? So we're going to try and break that up. But let's read Leviticus 23. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel the designated times of Adonai, which you are to proclaim as holy convocations are my designated times. What's a holy convocation? Right, a holy assembly, something that is, now remember, what does holy mean? Okay, something, a day set apart. Stop everything that's going on in your life. Stop everything that the world is telling you. They're going to say, well, it's just a Sunday, or it's just a Tuesday, or it's just a whatever he says. It doesn't matter what the world calls it, you call it this. And these are days that you assemble to meet. Okay? Now, in 3 of these, you will see that they're actually, the men are commanded actually to go all the way up to Jerusalem and are supposed to spend it in his presence. Alright? Speaking of the people that were staying in the promised land, it's a lot easier for them in that time. Alright? But still the mitzvah stands. It says work is to be done on 6 days, but the 7th day is a Shabbat of complete rest. A holy convocation, you are not to do any kind of work. It is a Shabbat, a Sabbath, for Adonai, even in your homes. Okay, so the first one he breaks down Shabbat. Okay? Now, for a Jewish person or someone who's understood Sinai, who's understood covenant, who's understood all of this, what is Shabbat about?
It's time with God.
All right, go back and remember, we have something called the rule of first mention. All right, if you want to understand anything in Scripture, if you're reading about it, go back and look to see if you found it anywhere else before. Because the stuff that happened before is what he's alluding to. It's like a remnant, okay? So he's linking, he says it is a Shabbat. Where else have I seen that word before? In the creation. God created for 6 days, and on the 7th day, he rested. And he called it a Shabbat. Okay, so we have a Sabbath. Did God need to rest? Was he tired? No, he created. Remember, he spoke and it happened. Okay? He says he does not get tired and weary. Yes? Okay, so he created everything. So what was the point of him stopping from creation?
Teach us what we need.
Right? Right? We need the rest. We're not God, number one. Okay? And number two, he stopped and he looked at his creation. Okay, so when you come down to the point of stopping and looking at creation, what is he trying to tell you? Stop and smell the flowers. There are times where you get so busy in your cycle, in your week, in your life, in your plans, in your preps and everything like that. You're so busy multitasking, you're not living in the moment now. You're worrying about what you're going to have for lunch and what you're going to do tonight and what your plans are for tomorrow. Okay, what does that tell you? And many times, some people need to snap you into the now and saying, you're sitting in fellowship here, you need to pay attention to what this is happening and don't worry about later. Later is going to happen regardless of whether you think about it now or not. It is a time where you can just stop from worrying about gathering your food, getting your stuff, organizing your life, and just say, you know what? For 6 days, I've probably neglected my relationship with God. This is the one day I can catch up. This is the one day I can turn around and I can look at what He's done for me over the last week, and I can say, Abba, I'm only here because you've kept me alive. Can anybody say amen to that? Amen. Right? You're living in a country, it's dangerous to go outside your doors. Right? But you go out knowing that God is going to bring you home and He's going to keep you safe and you have this loving relationship with Him. And you can look back and how many times do we see accidents on the road? Do we see people dealing with horrible things, people dealing with retrenchments and all these other things that you've been, and you're just completely oblivious to what God has had to do to keep you in your job.
How many times have you left home late, irritated, and you go past an accident and you might have been there?
Absolutely. What has God had to do to keep me alive? Because we have work to do. Okay, but we can stop and smell the flowers. Stop and live in the now. And part of that creation is work on your relationship with Him. We can start caught up in this stuff, and He says it's you need to take a break and just look at what I made for you. Now, what is the root word for Shabbat? I don't want to know the exact Hebrew word, but what does it mean? To strike. As in to lay down your tools. Okay?
Oh, we nailed that properly.
No, we got this done. You're South African, it should be easy. Right? You get to the point when you will say, that's it, I'm putting down my tools, I'm closing my computer, I'm switching off my phone, I am not yours for the next 24 hours, I am on strike. Done. I have given you how many hours a day. You're not taking this from me as well. Okay? Rich, you wanted to add something?
No, just a point. I thought about God. I mean, God gave that just after He created His, He gave the example. Which is interesting because the God of Eden is perfect. They weren't doing work. Yet, even then, people can say, no, we need a sabbatical principle because of work, we need to rest. But if we look at the beginning, they weren't working, but God still said on that day, holy compassion.
Right.
I mean, He made it even then when He was no sin.
Yeah. Stop and smell the flowers. Look at creation. Look at the God who created all these things. And the more you marvel, and then how many times have you guys gone away and you stood up and you've looked at the stars? Yeah. Or you've gone for a picnic out in the middle of nowhere and you've lied on your back and you've looked at the sky. How big do you feel? You feel kind of teeny and you're sitting over there and you look at the expanse of the heavens and the heavens declare His glory, that's what it says, right? And you can look at it and you can go, if He can hold all of this together, why am I doubting that He can not look after me? Why am I doubting the fact that He's here with me? Right? Sometimes we need to feel small to understand how big He is. Because we have this tendency of putting Him in a box. And if we make our God small, well then He can only do little works and then I have to do things myself and I'm in control again. But when it's all about Him, and we see the expanse and we see His works, just going to look at a flower and see the intricacy of that petal, the fragrance that He's given it. And He's looking at you and He goes, aren't you much more than this? I created that flower so that you would enjoy the smell and you would enjoy the sight. I love you that much that I've given you some serious decorating just so that you can enjoy it. Don't take it for granted.
What occurred to me is that keeping silent was our very first commandment.
Well, yeah. Okay? So, we have that, alright? So, that's an important day. Yes? Even in your home. So, don't think just because you're hiding in your house that you need to be distracted by anything else. I'm talking to the mom instead. Multitasking is your bane. The pain of existence. Right? You want to be so busy like, oh, okay, I can't sit still. How can I stay focused on that? So you find yourselves doing things. Right? Because we don't know how to switch off. We need to. These are the designated times of Adonai, the Holy Convocation Shore, to proclaim as designated times. In the first month, on the 14th day of the first month, between sundown and complete darkness, comes Pesach for Adonai, Passover. On the 15th day of the same month is the festival of Matzah, unleavened bread. For 7 days you are to eat matzah. On the first day you are to have a holy convocation. Don't do any kind of ordinary work. Bring an offering made by fire to Adonai for 7 days. And on the 7th day is a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. Adonai said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, after you enter into the land I'm going to give you, and harvest its ripe crops. You are to bring a sheaf of first fruits of your harvest to the kohen. Alright? So, let me just slow it down a little bit. When we talk about Pesach today, we're actually talking about 3 festivals. Okay? We like to draw it out on a menorah shape. You guys know menorah? Nice big lamp. Right? He created on 7 days. He gives us a lamp that has 7 branches. Okay? It's just a nice illustration. Okay? So we go in on our first branch. We start with Pesach. Okay? When does Pesach happen? On the 14th day. Okay, some of your translations will say Nisan. Alright? Nisan is a Babylonian term. Okay, that was one of the names that came out with Babylon. Okay, I have a slight issue with Babylonian terms because you get the months called Tammuz, and Tammuz is a pagan deity. Okay, so be careful of that. But what Scripture calls it is, they say you'll see sometimes it's translated in the spring or the first month. The word spring there is Aviv. The first month is called Aviv, or the first month. Just like the first day, the second day, the third day, the fourth day. It's month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay? So when we look at the 14th day of the month of Aviv, Aviv means what? Actually means ripe. What is ripe? Barley. Right. It is one of our harvest festivals. And it's the barley harvest we get in, which is why he says when you get into the land, harvest, it's your Aviv crops, and bring a sheaf up, and let the kohen will take from that of the first fruits. Okay? So we went from there to, sorry, just hang on a second. Unleavened bread. When does the unleavened bread start? On the 15th day. Okay? Of the first month. Okay? How many Sabbaths do we have then? We've got 2 Shabbats in the cycle. How long does that last? 7 days, it says, right? Look at your word. Take it slow. 7 days. Okay, so we've got a 7-day festival here. The first is a Shabbat, and the 7th day is a Shabbat. Everybody with me?
Yes, not so.
Yeah. All right. Then I'll bring you into this section here that we're talking about. Did you want to?
There it says on the 14th day of the first month at twilight is the Lord's Passover. Is that
Twilight.
in the
Okay.
afternoon or is that sundown?
In between. What we understand it to be is it's called literally between the 2 heavens.
Yeah, between the two.
Right? So we gauge it around 3 o'clock. Okay? Around 3 p.m. because as its sun is falling between, it's the last little end of sunshine. Okay? So if you're in between twilight, it could be 4 o'clock, it could be sunset going off at about 5.
The lamb at that time so that by the night time they could celebrate.
Remember, it's going to take you time. You've got to slaughter the lamb, you've got to capture the blood, you've got to cut off the skin, you've got to prepare the meat, you've got to have a fire going already, then you've got to roast it. Lamb doesn't take 5 minutes, right? And that means, like any good Jewish Seder, you eat at 12. No? Anybody been to an Orthodox Jewish Seder? No. They read the entire Exodus story. Alright? You go there thinking you're going to get fed, they put snacks on the table to maintain you until you get fed. You normally finish at about 11, 12 o'clock at night. Okay? And that's when they kind of, yeah, I'm talking about, you guys have no idea. Alright, so then it would go into, what was the next one he mentioned when you come into the land? First fruits, okay? Now, so this is the festival of first fruits. So he says, once you've reaped your ripe crops, you will bring them up as a nation. Not individuals, yeah? Call Israel, the word there is atem, all of you will come up, and you will bring up your harvest, and the first of your crops which you've separated, you give to the kohen, the priest, and he takes off that, a section of, and the name for that in Hebrew is Sephirah HaOmer. Okay? Now, some translations will say bring an omer full. If you go and look at that word omer, it actually means sheaf. You will take a sheaf of barley and you will wave it before God. That's all you need to worry about. Okay? The priest probably had no idea why he was doing this. We have barley, this is amazing, I'm very happy. Okay? We will see that there's a picture that comes up later.
When do they wait? On the Passover 14th day?
We're going to check now. Alright, let's have a look. Okay? Says you have to bring a sheaf of first fruits of the harvest of the kohen, verse 11. He is to wave the sheaf before Adonai so that you will be accepted. Mark that little thing there if you're gonna. The sheaf is so that you will be accepted. The kohen is to wave it the day after Shabbat. Okay, now this leads us to a conundrum. We go Shabbat or Shabbat? We've got 3 Shabbats going on here in 7 days, right? Right. Okay, but he doesn't refer to these 2 as Shabbats, he refers to them as holy convocations. He doesn't say it will be a Shabbat of complete rest for you, like he uses that one. He says it's a holy convocation, and then we'll get some people who say, we call that a holy convocation, but this is a Shabbat at the same time. Alright, so we have to go back into historical evidence, and you look at other portions of Scripture. I don't want to confuse you, okay? Where we stand now, it's after the weekly Shabbat is what we understand. Okay? And, well, it depends. If your Passover is on Wednesday, okay, your festival of unleavened bread, it happens always on the Sunday, the first day of the week. Doesn't change there. Okay? You guys with me?
First fruits.
Yes. Okay. Alright? Don't want to get you.
Does it happen though after the 7th day?
No.
And then, so it's in between.
In
So it's always
between.
been- always in between.
That's why when they talk about Pesach, they're actually talking about a collective. When they're talking about it, it's you celebrate Passover, but Passover you cannot separate from unleavened bread, and unleavened bread you can't separate from first fruits. They all happen together. And to sort of back up my story, I'll take you to the crucifixion, and I will show you within that period it all happened together.
That's also called Pesach, the day of preparation.
The preparation day normally happens the day before, or yeah, on the 14th day. Right, so they'll be preparing for the festival of unleavened bread. Okay? But that's New Testament
Sorry,
communication.
Trish, I
Yes.
just need some clarity on this, because this is where I get stuck. And I don't mean to waste people's time. But if Pesach, okay, if the 14th was on the Saturday evening and the 15th is on the Sunday, does that mean first fruits is only the next Sunday?
Probably because they'll have to carry on after Pesach.
But if Pesach is on a Wednesday, that means
No, on Sunday.
on the Sunday. Okay.
Okay. Alright. Don't get lost in it. I'm just trying to show you pictures. Okay? You guys still with me? Yes.
It's like, lots of the audience. I don't know what you're
No, no, no. Focus on pictures. On the 14th day of the first month comes Passover. Okay? From the 15th comes the festival of unleavened bread. In between the two, we will wave a barley sheaf. That's all I want you to worry about right now. Okay? Now, let's get back into context. When did Passover happen? First time? In Egypt. Okay, so why were they in Egypt? Okay?
The needed for the time for the people that were in the land of Canaan fully qualify their last obedience.
Thank you, sir. Right? God made a promise to Abraham in Genesis 15, verse 12, 13, and 14. Check me, write it down. Okay? It says, Genesis 15, verses 12, 13, and 14. No, let me just go. Let's lock this down. Okay? Now Genesis 15 is when he talks about it's the covenant that comes in. Go to verse 12. As the sun was about to set, a deep sleep fell on Abraham. Horror and great darkness came over him. Adonai said to Abraham, know this for certain, your descendants will be foreigners in the land that is not theirs. They will be slaves and held in oppression for 400 years. But I will also judge that nation, the one that makes them slaves. Okay? So, God says, Abraham's like, well, you give me all the stuff, but I don't have an heir. And he says, let's you and I get serious here for a moment. They split the animals from tail to snout. And he's supposed to walk through it, and he says, listen here, my boy. Your descendants are going to be locked away for 400 years. We know, because we have a beautiful thing on hindsight, and we can look forward to scripture, that they left after 400 years. Okay? He will take a few. So he goes in and he says, they're going to go, but don't worry, I'm going to judge them. Okay? I'm going to judge that nation. The judgment on the nation is going to build up to Pesach. Okay? Put in your mind the plagues. The plagues are going to happen. Alright? Afterwards, they will leave with many possessions. They plundered Egypt when they left because they just wanted it to go. He gave them a whole bunch of stuff. They asked whatever they wanted, they got. And then they left. And he says, as for you, you will join your ancestors in peace and be buried in a good old age. Okay. Only in the fourth generation will your descendants come back here, because only then will the Imori be ripe for punishment. That's what I'm convinced of. He gave the Amorites 400 years to get their act together. Now just think about it. When you say God is patient, He gave a people 400 years to stop running from Him. Years.
It's longer than America's existence.
Nice point. So we're sitting over there, we're looking at it, and God, you say, when God is patient, God is kind, I need you to get into that frame of reference. Okay? So he promises Abraham that they're going to be there, they're going to be slaves. Fast forward to a famine, and a little, if I can coin a South African phrase, snot called Joseph, who's a little bit arrogant in his time. How do I know Joseph was arrogant? Remember, he was given 2 visions. Yes? Okay, the first vision?
One was the stars flying down, and one was his brothers bowing down.
Sheaves. Ah, sheaves. Sheaves were bowing down. Wait, often. Sheaves were bowing down to him, and after he knew, he said, and remember, he was second last in quite what we understand a fairly large age gap. So you may be like 11, 12 years old, and your other brothers maybe 20, maybe 30. And you look at him and you go, hey, God told me you're going to bow down to me. What's a normal big brother response? You practice lying down, right? And he had no problem, even though he understood the vision. It's the way he brought it across in many American. Remember, he was the boy with the technicolored coat, that coat of many colors. It was as he was being declared, he was being lifted up. He was going to get the blessing of the firstborn. Was it the firstborn? Of the most beloved wife, but not the firstborn in the family. That's Reuben. Simeon, Levi come after them. What about Judah? Little boyki's way down the list, and he's standing here with his coat, and he's going, don't worry, you guys look after the sheep, I'll stay here with Pops. Make sure you don't lose any of my inheritance, okay? He has another vision, another dream. What was that one? Mark mentioned about? Sun, the moon, and the stars. It's interesting that it comes in, and again, the time of the Moedim again, right? So we have sheaves and we have the times, seasons, okay? So we can come and he gets brought in, and this time the father gives the interpretation. And he says, shall your mother and I bow down to you? So not only are you giving Reuben and big brothers a little bit, now you're telling daddy you will serve. Now, in a patriarchal society in the Middle East, this is something probably frowned upon. I think it's
Kids stone up for that sort of stuff.
But why did they say that Sarah was going to bow down to him because she died? She died before they...
we're talking about Joseph.
I'm sorry.
So Joseph, who was Joseph's, who was part of the matriarchal system there. Okay, Rachel and Leah. Remember, and we had Bilhah and Zilpah that were included in that sort of system as other mothers, right? Okay, so he's saying, all right, you think your mothers and I are going to stand by down to you, my boy, you've got another thing coming. And God had to deal with Joseph. How do you deal with Joseph? Joseph, in all of his grandeur and all of his pomp and circumstance, lost his coat, ended up in a ditch. And his brothers were like, should we kill him? No, we can't kill him. Let's sell him to
Amalekites, if I'm not mistaken.
check your skirt. Check quickly. See, fastest fingers first. It's a very interesting reference.
It was the Ishmaelites who sold them to America.
Ishmaelites. Don't worry, we'll sell them to our cousins. Ishmael, good guy?
Arabs.
Ah, problem. Right, you are good for nothing. But even sell him to the Ishmaelites. Bought the inheritance, right? And we get this thing where he gets pegged down, he goes off into Egypt, he gets into Potiphar's household, he gets lifted up, and then he gets a fancy new cloak. And with a fancy new cloak, he gets a little bit of chutzpah again. And we know he was quite pretty, and his wife was like, my husband's not here, let's you and I have a conversation. Yes? And he said, what was his speech? Paraphrase it for me.
Thanks, but no thanks. Wouldn't be okay.
He says, you have seen how I've been lifted up in this household, and I'm in charge of everything, and the master only says I'm not allowed to touch you. Who's in control of this household? I control everything. Look at my fancy coat. And Abba goes, you didn't learn the first time, let's stop. So she pins him up against the wall and she says, you will have your way with me. And then he runs. Good Jewish boy. Says when sin comes scratching at the door, don't try and make a stand while you're there saying, no, no, you cannot have me. No. We put ourselves into positions where it's difficult for us to resist. The point is, you saw that coming ages ago. You should have left long before then. And what did he lose when he ran out the door? Oh, he lost his coat. And she said, you see this Hebrew boyki, what he tried to do? Yeah, he's leaving his clothes all over the place, throwing himself at me. And he finds himself in a pit. He goes to prison. Right? And he stays there and he gains favor and then he becomes again the right hand and he starts looking after the prisoners and all the rest of it. And he gets lifted up and then he meets two interesting characters. They have dreams. Joseph has some experience with dreams. A baker and the cupbearer. Right. The bread and the wine. You should be making New Testament pictures, right? And he gives him interpretation. What was the interpretation? Who died?
Baker. But that guy.
The baker, right? And remember, it was the bread that he offered at Pesach, and he said, this is my body, it's going to be ground and broken for you. My body's going to die. But his blood will go on, don't worry. Right? So later he's going to establish that. Yeah? So as he sees this, and then, the cupbearer is like, he says, when you come out, remember me. Now remember, Hebrew, remember doesn't mean you forgot me. It means act on my behalf. But like any good person who just got released from prison and gets reinstated, he doesn't want to remind Pharaoh why he was put in prison, correct? Hey Pharaoh, remember that time there was a fly in your wine and you locked me up? Or, by the way, there was this guy. So time had passed until Pharaoh had a dream, right? And then all of a sudden we get the cupbearer and he goes, I remember this guy, you might not, I don't want you to remember why I was locked up, but anyway, let's not get into that. But here's the guy. And Joseph ends up preparing the lamb. Okay? Now in many cases, Joseph is a Messiah type, a foreshadow of Messiah, right? He gets someone who gets lifted up to the right hand of the most powerful person. And he prepares what? What is Joseph's job? Prepare the harvest so that there will be enough food. Okay, so the harvesting Revelation talk. But anyway, you get into this point of he's going to make sure that there is enough food. Bread gives life. So the bread of life comes from Joseph. Yes? Alright? The man who sits at the right hand of the power. You understand? Okay. So you get to this point where he gets lifted up, and instead this time he gets a meeting with his brothers, and then he messes with them a little bit, and then he comes back. They don't recognize him because Egyptians believe body hair is not something you should keep. So he shaved everything, he was dead, we forgot about him, he's changed over time, and he reveals himself, and God through Joseph, brings life to the people of Israel. Okay? Remember, if Joseph did not go through this whole thing to be able to give them the wisdom to prepare bread, where would Daddy Dearest and Brother Dearest and all of them get food? They wouldn't. They probably would have died out, and there we go. End of the story. No Mashiach, no God, no Torah. Finished. We had a good run, we lost a couple generations. And then we all starved. And he recognizes it, and he said, you deemed it for me as bad, but God deemed it for me as good. But Joseph doesn't only become the bread of life for Israel, or the provider of life for Israel. Joseph, it says, he fed Egypt, he fed Israel, and it said the whole world comes up. So everybody who eats of the bread of life, Messiah, comes up, and they will be full, and they will have life. Yes?
But the abundance of that harvest in those 7 years must have been awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To feed the whole world, if there's no more.
You know? And they would have come up and they would go. It's absolutely astounding. But it's a foreshadow of Messiah. But anyway, we get there to Joseph, and Joseph puts them in. After Pharaoh forgets about them, new Pharaoh comes in, enslaves them because he's worried about all these people in his land and they're going to overthrow us. Guys, there's an important principle here. That which you fear and you try and prevent when it comes to God's kingdom or God's promise could be the very thing that overthrows you. Okay, let me give you another example. Let me explain it to you. Okay? So Pharaoh thought the Israelites were going to overthrow him and Egypt and take his land. But if he understood God's promise, he said that they were going to go free. They were only supposed to be there for 400 years. He could have just let them go. Right? He would never have lost his kingdom. He would have been blessed for looking after them. Okay? But instead, his fear led him to enslavement, and because of his enslavement, God judged him. Okay? Same things happened with Jeroboam. Jeroboam gets promised that he would rule over the 10 northern tribes of Israel, and he says, lest they go down and worship God in Judah in the temple, and they never want to come up again, I'm going to lose my kingdom. So what did he do? He put 2 cultic places up, one in Dan and one in Bethel, and he made golden calves, and he says, this is where you will worship. And that's how he lost his kingdom. His fear led him to make a bad decision, which led him to lose his kingdom. He lost the promise of God. Okay? This is important in our time, especially what's going on in the country. Don't get yourself fear-mongering over everything. If God has made a promise to bring favor, and He's promised to bless you, and He's promised to hold you, don't be ignorant, but don't make a decision out of fear. You will lose your inheritance. You will lose your promise. You with me? Stay focused. Okay? He is not surprised about what's going on here. He's sitting there going, well, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, but I don't want you to listen to them, I want you to listen to me. Right? So he gets up, and all of this enslavement happens, and that comes again back to Genesis 15. And then we have Moshe pitch up on the scene. Moses goes into the whole state in the Nile. Remember, Pharaoh wanted to destroy the Hebrews by taking out the boys, marrying off the girls, assimilate them. We don't have any problem. They're all Egyptians now. Funny enough, that's kind of what happened to Egypt itself. They got assimilated by Greeks, and now we don't have true Egyptians anymore. It's kind of a Greek-Arab offshoot. Okay? So he comes up, and out of fear, he kills babies, throws them into the Nile, and we know the story of Miriam. She says, no, I can't do this, and she makes a little basket, and she covers it with pitch. Tar. Where else do we see that in Scripture? Noah's Ark. That which is going to lift you from the judgment of this nation, I'm going to keep you safe in the little basket. You with me? Okay? Judgment is going to come. But I'm going to protect mine. So he saves Moses, puts him underneath Pharaoh's nose. He says, well, here we go. You're so busy out there looking for the enemy, I'm going to put him right here. And you're going to pay for him to grow up real good and strong, and you're going to teach him, and you're going to get him all nice life. We put it again.
But as a prince of Egypt, he also would have been trained as a soldier, as a general.
Absolutely. Court system, theology, war, everything. He would have got the education people dreamed about. And then, something similar. Moses maybe gets a little bit of a, I'm going to save my people. Sages say he hated injustice. He sees a slave getting worked, tells the guy to, hey, stop, slow down a little bit, and then no one was looking, he goes, I'm going to save my boy here, and he kills the man and he covers it up. Notice, God wasn't involved in that instruction in any way, shape, or form. Yes? And then what happens? Killing Egyptians, time to run. Everybody else knows.
But you see, it is the sheep.
When you try to do things in your own strength, you mess up God's plan. You only get yourself in trouble. So he goes for a run, and he ends up being a shepherd for 40 years. So if you look at, I think it's Acts 7, it talks about, just checking, Acts 7, Stephen talks about the 40-year cycles, right? And he says he was a prince for 40 years, and for 40 years he was trained up as a shepherd because God said, you want to understand my sheep? You want to understand my people? You want to understand what I'm trying to do for you? That's how Egypt leaders operate. Now we're going to show you how a godly leader operates. And he gives him two completely contrasting pictures. War, theology, excitement. He goes, sheep.
Right.
Yeah. I'm a king, man. What are you talking about? Sheep. Yeah, you look after the flock. You love the flock. You become, and it's funny enough that again we see that time and time again with David. We see it with Messiah, the good shepherd.
But isn't it also that the sheep were something that were despised by the Egyptians?
Mm.
And here someone was brought up as an Egyptian looking after sheep.
Absolutely, because they weren't despised themselves, they were actually revered. But because here is your God, go to sheep, bah! How dare you strike my deity? Stupid sheep, it's going to climb off the cliff. You've got a conflict of interest, right? So what they revered, we treat as common. We understand that we have to shepherd the flock, we have to look after them, we have to do this, and we have to bring them up so that they will live.
So that's why Pharaoh had a problem with them going out and making sacrifices, because they were going to go and burn Fluffy.
Exactly. If you burn Fluffy, you're burning our deity. I kind of don't agree with your theology. Like, I don't care what you agree with. We've got to go out God said. Okay? Read.
I was going to say, imagine the kind of mind that Moses was in, raised as a prince of Egypt. 40 years, that's your lifestyle, now you Northerners.
Right.
Thinking, okay, this is my life. And you accept it eventually, it must have taken a long time to accept it. And he accepts it, and he goes like, sorry, that's not the end of the road for you.
Yeah.
Remember, all of a sudden there's a whole other adventure, like crazy.
Yeah. He takes them off and he gets to the point, and then all of a sudden, around the end of 40 years, he sees a burning bush. Right? And he goes and visits the burning bush on Mount Sinai. And then he has a conversation with God. Right? As he has this conversation with him, he says, okay, Moshe, I'm going to free my people, man. And he's like, oh, it's about time, Abba, you know, this is fantastic, let's do this. And he goes, but I'm sending you. And then he starts with his excuses. Right?
That's the only time that it mentions it. The first time it mentions
What?
God with angels.
But I mean, do you think Moses even really had an understanding of who the God of his father's work was?
Yeah, I think he did, because otherwise he wouldn't have struck the Egyptian, not he would have ruled over him. I think his mom, remember, he was weaned. Weaning was 5 or 6 years. So by the time a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, you've fed enough about him, you're a Hebrew, don't let them tell you otherwise. You're a Hebrew, don't let them tell you otherwise. You're a Hebrew, you're going to save your people. God saved you for a purpose. Moshe.
I mean, you didn't really know much about.
Not as much as what he should have, but
But
there's a foundation about it, right? I mean, 400 years is a long time. We haven't heard his voice. No one has told him about it. I think a lot of the problem is that most of Israel were Egyptized. This is our life. We're slaves. This is all we're meant to be. They forgot the promises of Abraham. I want you to go to Exodus 6, verse 6 quickly. Something we did on Wednesday. Exodus 6, verse 6. Okay, you'll see this, they're called the four promises of Pesach. That gets surmised in the 4 cups of the Seder, which I'll take you through. He says, therefore say to the people of Israel, I am Yehovah. I will free you from forced labor of the Egyptians. I will rescue you from your oppression, redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. I will take you as my people and I will be your God. We stop. Okay? There's 4 promises that he gives them. What are they? Okay? Is that the first one? Free?
I will bring it out. Yeah.
Free you from forced labor.
I will free you. What else?
Rescue or redeem. There's rescue. and
Rescue.
And take you as my people.
Redeem.
Take you as my people.
And take you, verse 7,
Thank you, and
to be
I
mine.
think rescue and redeem would probably.
No,
Just as a different pictures that bring you into the land.
no, bringing you land. These are the 4 cups. Okay? So he says, I'm going to free them, I'm going to rescue them. Okay? So it's not just good enough that I bring you out of oppression, I'm not going to leave you there. Okay? To free someone is to take off the chains. To rescue them from what? From their mentality, from the injustices that they had. He's going to bring them to the point where he will redeem them. Redeem means what? To buy them back. There has to be a cost involved. I am buying you back for what purpose?
He set a point for
No, to bring you back into the Father's house. Okay? It's actually a custom. You'll see it in Torah that if one of your brothers go off and they sell themselves into slavery, it is if it's within my power to go and buy him out of his contract so that he may come back home, as the patriarch, that's my job. Moses. God is the patriarch. He says, you're going to be part of this process, but I am going to get them to the place of redeeming. Okay? This redemption comes in again with the crucifixion. You'll see. Okay? And the last promise, I will take you and you will be mine. Okay? Talks about the time that they bring them into covenant and they bring them into Sinai. Okay? Very quickly, Moses has a tendency to he makes excuses, right? Moses makes three excuses. I'm not going to go into them now. But each excuse, God gives him an answer. Right? And he's going to prepare him, and he's going to be with him, and he's going to go, yeah, but send anybody but me. And he goes, oh, well, I did. Aaron's waiting for you. He says you must go with. That's a paraphrase version. And the two of them go off. And now they're going to go face the past. Pharaoh, Moses, take two. This time, God's plan, God's agenda. Alright? We have plague after plague after plague after plague. I'm going to go quickly through them next week. Okay? Next week we'll do the plagues and I'll give you the point of each plague. And then after that, we're going to, after the plagues, we're going to deal with Passover, and I'm going to give you each step according to the image that is happening. And then the week after, I will take you into New Testament linkage. Okay? So that you understand what Yeshua was doing at the time of Passover. Why he was celebrating, what was done with the crucifixion. And I'm going to show you that each one of these, as we look at them, each feast is a foreshadow of what he did and what was going on in his life. And when you look at the setup, you can actually go further. The miracles he did is in the order of the plagues, building up in power. Okay? All right? Everybody happy? We're okay until that point? All right, happy days. Break down this episode.
Quick question.
Yeah.
If Pesach, the 14th day of Aviv, is the Friday, is that whole day of the Sabbath, or just in
Not the 14th day, the 50th day is the Shabbat.
for the next day of the Sabbath?
So from sunset. Okay. Make a circle. Alright, now last. Are you sure he's got bread?
If we can just go to ours. Father, my King, I thank you so much that we can come to your feet and learn about your truth, Father. Thank you that we can come and learn about what Pesach is all about. Father, help us to understand and teach us and lead us, Father, for the next 3 weeks. Father, help us to know what we need to throw out. Help us to know what the chametz is in our lives, as well as in physical, Father. May we come to you in this time, Father, just with full worship and glory, Father, that you have brought us out of bondage, that we are free because we have Yeshua HaMashiach as our King and our Savior. Father, I thank you so much for your love upon us. I thank you that he died for our sins. Father, forgive us if we have wronged you in any way, and may we have the ability to forgive others. Father, I also pray for those who could not be here today. I pray that you be with them and strengthen them, Father, so that they may return to you. And thank you so much, Lord, for everything you do for us. Amen.
Amen.